How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and welcome back to another episode of Don't Starve Together MODlight. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the mods that I've been playing around with in the past week and give you a brief demonstration. The first mod that we're going to be taking a look at, though, here is called Clones by EUSong and Feedoop. It allows you to craft yourself a clone to follow you around and help you do chores. Now, this mod itself is pretty in-depth, and the description does not give you a lot of context as to what to expect off of it, so I think a little bit more work could have been put into the description to help clarify what these clones are actually capable of doing or give us some actual practical examples. That said, I know personally that this mod has been a long time in the making in various different formats, and there's been a lot of effort that was put into it, so I know there's a lot here. It's just I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it justice presenting it because there seems to be stuff that was hidden away that I'm just not aware of. But regardless of that, let's give it a brief demonstration here. I'm going to explain how it works when we jump into the game. Okay, so here I am. I'm Wilson with a muddy suit on a muddy background, but disregard that. What we want to do is actually craft a clone. And how we're going to do that is through the magic tab when we're standing next to a tier 1 or higher magic station. The clone itself is going to cost a telltale heart and then something that is relevant to the character that is currently crafting the clone. So if I'm not mistaken, different characters have different clones that can do different things. So I'm using Wilson's clones here, and we're just going to craft those. So right there you can see there's a mini Wilson that pops up. One thing that I wish would change about this mod, that, you know, something that just sort of struck me that can get a little bit on your nerves after a while, is when you're standing around, your clones have the tendency to talk a lot, and it can just get a little bit irritating after a while. But we can dress it up. This is thanks to the modded or moddable skins API that was designed by Feedoop for modded characters. It allows you to use items that you currently own for the regular characters on modded characters, and that's what this character here is considered. So, you know, we can give Wilson one of our frost robes because I actually own that garment. But as you can see, Wilson's clone was standing around talking quite a bit, and I can see that getting on people's nerves after a certain amount of time because it's a rather shrill voice. But we can also do things like give him tools. So right here is an axe that I crafted. I can give it to my clone. And sometimes he will actually chop down trees. Now, this has been a bit hit or miss for me. I'm not exactly sure what is always required. Like, you can toggle chores, and he'll go ahead and pick stuff, but I'm not exactly sure what causes him to chop the tree or not, because like you can see there, he went and picked the sapling before he chopped the tree, so it's a little bit hit or miss for me for that. But, you know, you can get them to do chores like that. They're a little bit like Maxwell's shadow workers in that sense. And if we want to get the stuff that he's picked up, because obviously he picked a whole bunch of the stuff up from the ground, we can just toggle the chores on him again, and he'll drop everything that we gave him that was related to the job. So you can see there we got everything that was in his inventory. Another thing you can do is actually dress them up. So if you wanted to, let's say we get a walking cane here, a bush hat, and a bit of armor, we can go ahead and give that to the clone, and they can wear it just like that. Here, walking cane. So as you can see, they're most certainly capable of some pretty interesting stuff. They also dance with the main character, or they can do similar emotes. So if you do dance, for example, the clone will dance with you. Now, you can also create additional clones. Like, I'm not exactly sure what the hard limit is, but I know I've done 3 in the past. So let's get 3 clones here, and we're going to give them an assortment of wacky tools for them to use. So one of them has the walking cane, one of them is going to have the morning star here to keep things bright, and the other one's going to have a whip. And we're also going to get some armor for them, because we might spawn in some enemies to see if they'll fight them. Have some football helmets. But as you can see, you know, as you add more clones to it, it becomes a bit overwhelming with all the text and this voice sounds. So we're going to have some spiders here. Now, by default, the clones usually will run away from spiders and other enemies, but it seems like if they're attacked, the clones will attack back. So like if we tell them to attack this one, you know, my clones will get in there and do some attacking as well. I wouldn't say they make excellent warriors, at least not Wilson's anyway, but, you know, they could help you a little bit. And they also do have their own health. There's really no easy way to see how much health they currently have, but they do have their own health, which means that they can be killed, or you can heal them, much like you would heal a regular character. So as you can see, we can just heal up the ones that are damaged. I don't think there's any way to see how much health they have, so that's a bit of a limitation there. But yeah, let's say you wanted to get rid of them. The most effective way seems to actually be killing them off as clones, Let's target the one with the bush hat because it doesn't have any armor. And you can see the other one sort of ganged up on him as well. So the AI mentality is a bit similar to, and there it goes. And now it will turn into a ghost, which we also have to kill to finally get rid of it once and for all. But the mentality there is a bit like the pigmen, where, or even the bunny men, where if you attack one, the rest of the nearby ones will go after it based on your actions. I think that gives you a general idea of what you can do with them. Like I said before, as far as I'm aware, it's possible that all of them have their own unique abilities based on the character that created the clone, but I haven't figured out what those are, and it was never announced in the mod details, so there's no publicly facing information that would let players know what they could expect from each character's individual clones. But it is certainly an interesting idea, and I'm kind of glad to see the idea fully realized here, even if it wasn't in its original incarnation. Okay, the next mod we're going to be taking a look at here is also a server-side mod called Less Placement Blocking by Toasty Stoat. And it says it prevents unreasonable things from blocking placement. Now, I personally think this description is a little bit lacking because it doesn't really describe what kind of things you might be placing and what will no longer block placement of those things. But if you actually look at some of the comments for the mod itself, it sort of goes into more detail, and the picture does a lot to help explain. The picture icon for the mod does a lot to explain the kinds of things it prevents blocking you from building. So we're just going to jump in here, and I'm going to briefly demonstrate how I found it useful and why I think it's a really cool idea. So let's say you're doing something like planting pine cones, and there's just a lot of random stuff laying on the ground, like this bush hat here. Now, while it's true that you can't like literally place it right on top of the bush hat, it doesn't have the same radius that it normally would. It would prevent you from placing things down there. So for example, seeds. If we're planting here next to the seeds, we can just continue planting on, and we won't have to stop to pick up the seeds. Same thing with other things that can just be randomly laying around on the ground. This meat here, for example, like we don't have to worry about picking the meat up to be able to place the stuff down. Same thing can be said for structures. So if we're building a base and we wanted to put down, like, let's say an alchemy engine here, right? So the flint does not prevent me from building the alchemy engine there, but actual structures will, like those trees that I planted there. Those are considered to be actual structures, but things that are just randomly laying on the ground, like seeds, or like this monster meat here, that bird even, like these are not considered to be hindrances. They're not considered to be obstacles that would prevent you from placing that structure there. I especially find it useful when planting trees, which is why I kind of use that as my default example. A lot of times what will happen is when I'm planting a large forest, I'll be putting down the pine cones, and then a bird will fly in and drop a seed, and it'll prevent me from putting down another one of those pine cones, planting another one of those pine cones until I go ahead and pick that seed up, which is just, you know, it's a little annoyance. It's a bit of a waste of time. And it's nice to not have to worry about that with this mod. Same thing when building structures. Maybe you're building a base out and you wanted to put down a structure there, but oh, there's a seed laying there. There's a grass gecko just dropped a piece of a tuft of grass. You know, there's just these little tiny things that become annoying that you usually have to stop what you're doing to pick them up to clear the space that you can just ignore now using this mod. Okay, the last mod we're going to be taking a look at here for today is actually for the Gorge. It is called Gorge Cookpot Detail Filler. Once again, another mod today by Feedoop, and it has a lengthy description. It says it fills out your recipe book data for each discovered recipe in completion, and then it sort of goes on to explain how you can do this. Now, this is not the type of mod that you leave enabled. It's a kind of a one and done, and you run it and then forget it. So how it works is when the cookbook and Don't Starve Together for the Gorge event, which is a limited time event. If you're watching this video later, it's quite possible the Gorge event has come to an end, so you're not going to see it. But what it would do, but when you were in the Gorge event, there was a recipe book, and this recipe book was kind of dynamically generated with information based on your actions in game. And this was in contrast to the recipe book that Clay made available on their own website, which meant that if you actually wanted to get accurate information, like the best information available, you couldn't use your in-game recipe cookbook. You had to go to the website and use that cookbook instead, which can be an inconvenience for a lot of people in playing the game, because a lot of people only have one screen that they're playing on, and to have to tab in and out of the game like that, simply to refer to the recipe, the cookbook, so you could understand what you should be including in your recipes to make food, it was annoying, right? It was a nuisance. And this mod circumvents that in a way that is considered to be acceptable, right? It does not fill out your entire cookbook if you don't know the recipes, but the recipes that you do know, what it will do is it'll go ahead and overwrite your existing data for those recipes with more accurate data and more comprehensive data. So what you end up doing, and you'll probably see it here, is you hit the tilde key on your keyboard to open up the command line, and you type in fill out recipe book, open parent, close parent. And after you have, of course, enabled the Gorge Cookbot detail filler mod, and this will overwrite the data that currently exists in your cookbook with more accurate data and better data. Now, for myself, as I usually referred to the website cookbook anyway, towards the end of the Gorge, this is not necessarily a huge boon, but one of the things that I did like is now if I am going to use the in-game cookbook, when I filter recipes based on food craving that they satisfy, I don't have to worry about certain recipes being omitted simply because in the past I served it that recipe for that craving type, and then therefore it wouldn't show up as being able to satisfy that craving type. This might not make a lot of sense to you, especially if you've not played the Gorge. And the mod itself is pretty specific in what it does, and most people probably won't need it, but I think it is most certainly a nice little quality of life improvement for the Gorge, and me personally, it now allows me to use the in-game recipe cookbook and get good recipes out of it. Recipes that are on par with what I would be seeing and using from the website version of the cookbook. But I think you should at least take a look at it if you're somebody who uses the in-game Gorge cookbook. That's going to do it for this episode. As always, the links to the mods that I covered in this video will be found in the description below, so check them out if you're interested in any of them. If you like the ones that you use, be sure to take the time to thank the creator for making and sharing it with us. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching as always, and I hope to see you next time.